Well, very much welcome to this workshop, The Future of Education and Modern Workplace Learning, stream 2 as it was intended originally in the conference setup. We have 3 presentations of which we are very pleased to have with you. We thought it was good to end with the presentation that really also has future in its title, and that's why we end with the presentation by Eva and her colleagues, Dorothée and Anita, on University Continuing Education as an innovation incubator for future education. So that's the last presentation. And we in the middle we have Ineke, Ineke Lam, who is then worked together with her colleagues Sanne ten Berge, Lisbeth van der Grint, Rauw van Hagenmeijer, Caroline Ouwehand, and Karen Smit. And she's working on the pedagogy for continuing education and focusing on customization and reciprocity. But we will kick off with a presentation by Eva Krczal, if I pronounce your last name right, from Danube University in Krems in Austria, together with her colleagues, and that's a whole list. Felix Kees en Uisenberg and Birgit Teufel, Alexander Braun, Rita Franczewskowska, Klaus-Jürgen Heinrich, Christiane Kien, and Lydia Russell. And she will talk about workplace learning at a time of a digital revolution. Please put your questions in the chat or raise your hand if you want to have something. Eva, do you mind do you prefer that questions are discussed after your presentation, or do you do you prefer that you have during your presentation already questions put on the table? What do you like?
Well, for me, if there's an immediate question, you can raise the question, but while I'm doing my presentation, I might not see the chat, and I might not notice if there's someone raising his hand or writing something in the chat. But you can have a break. You can give me a notice if you like.
Perfect,
yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Well, we said
Okay.
To each other in the preparation of this workshop that we roughly divide the time half between presentation and discussion, but we will see how things end up. So no hurry, and I hope we have a very interesting discussion among each other, and looking at the outlines for the 3 different presentations. I think we certainly will have that. So Eva, you are the first workplace learning at a time of a digital revolution. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. I will share the screen with you. Okay. Okay, so it should work now. So hello to everyone. My name is Eva, and I'm a researcher at the Danube University Krems. Today I will present you the results of our research project, Workplace Learning at the Time of Digital Revolution. So here you can see some impressions of Danube University Krems, and today it's like this with sun and blue sky. On the right side, you see some members of our research team. It was quite large. This was when they were visiting one of our cases, a manufacturing company, for the walking interviews we conducted within the scope of our research project. So I will start with a background of how we designed this research project. Digital transformation and the emergence of the information industry have caused far-leading disruptions in the world of work. Especially the recent COVID pandemic, digitalization took the form of a surge and affected all aspects of life, including work and education. Changes in the world of work affect working arrangements, as well as required skills and qualifications. And not to forget that digital transformation also requires psychosocial adaptations to new forms of work. Thus, it is crucial to understand how employees perceive, how they experience the digital transformation, and how they react to it, how they acquire digital skills. Okay. So we designed a research project following a number of research questions. I have to say it was a larger research project. It took us about 2 years. And today I will concentrate on the topic learning, on the topic workplace learning. So we had a number of research questions concerning how do employees perceive the digital revolution, what are their expectations, their attitudes, fears, what are their coping strategies, and the most important point for today, what is the role of learning at a time of digital revolution? We were especially interested in when, where, and how do employees acquire digital competencies? And what differences can be observed between the generations? So we conducted a multiple case study. We have chosen 3 diverse cases from different industries. They were all at the beginning of their digital journey and adopted different strategies on how to proceed with the digital transformation. It was a large globally operating manufacturing company, a small private hospital in a small town, and a public state hospital. Within each case organization, we employed the multi-method qualitative research design. We collected different types of data through focus group discussions, interviews, walking interviews, and document analysis. Interviews and focus groups presented our primary source of data. Data analysis revealed 8 major topics. And I will go into detail of point 7, the role of learning. Before I will present the results of our research, I would like to provide you with 2 typical examples. These are two situations that have been described to us by our interview partners. Special situations, they are usual in their daily working routine. So there's situation 1. Imagine you are arriving at your workplace in the morning. As a daily routine, you turn on your PC, you soon realize that the interface is completely different and you don't find the right button to open the work schedule for today. So what would you do? You have different options. You could call the IT support. You could search in the help function for the program. You could try out different buttons and functions or ask your colleague. And I would like you to think of yourself, if you were this person, what would you do in such a situation? We tried to prepare a poll for you, but I just got the information that it doesn't really work. So I would like you to write your comments in the chat and say what option would you choose. Okay, I see much call the IT support, ask a colleague, try out different options. So it's quite diverse what you are planning to do. There are a number of alternatives, and the most important thing is to get the right information from the right person. Okay, so I cannot make a clear preference to one of these options. I will just go through it. These are options that have also been discussed in the focus groups. So I will say what was in the case studies, the main opinion. The first option, called the IT support, that's a formal way of reacting. But there might be problems due to misunderstandings or different communication used by professionals and the IT support. For example, at my university, you must not call the IT support by telephone. You are expected to write a mail, an email, and wait until it's your turn. Yes, that can be frustrating if you need help urgently. For the IT experts, it's their common way of processing data, doing one thing after another. Then the next option, search in the help function of the program. If you have ever tried to find something in MS Office, for example, you might have experienced that it sometimes takes a long time to find the right search terms, to find the right instruction and to carry it out. Try out different buttons and functions that's a typical answer that we got from the millennials, so from the young generation, trial and error. And ask your colleague, that was a typical answer from the older generations. Ask your colleague turned out to be the most preferred and the most effective way of solving these problems, because they speak your own language and they know exactly what problems you have. So I will turn to another situation. Okay, that's here. That's a situation that might cause a lot of stress to employees. Imagine you are working as an eye doctor in a hospital. You have to prepare an emergency operation for a patient who has a severe injury on the eye. The examination device doesn't operate because it claims to have no connection to the license server. What would you do? Call the IT support, switch on and off the device, check the internet connection, or ask your colleague. So please again, tell us in the chat what would you do in this situation? I would do all the options, yes. One after another. Option 2, switch on and off the device. Option 1, call the IT support. 2, 2, 2, 3. Okay, option 1. So I think it's more option 1 or 2 or 3. They're very beneath each other, because if you call the IT support, the first thing they will tell you is to switch on and off the device or to check the internet connection. So if you have experience with the IT support, you just do option 2 or option 3. Option 4, I think nobody of you named option 4, asking a colleague. Again, in the hospital, this would be the most preferred answer, but the most preferred answer from special professional groups like nurses or non-physician professions. Because we have certain subcultures in hospital. So if a junior physician is asking a senior physician, it's not such a big problem as if a senior or chief physician is asking a junior physician, because we have a very strong hierarchical thinking, a strong hierarchy. I hope I spell it right. Hierarchy in hospitals. Okay, so thank you again for your comments, and I will now present you the main results of our research. I think it's only a little bit slowly to switch to the next slide, but it should come. Today we have to be patient very often. Okay, so we found out, or what we observed was that the acquisition of problem-solving skills is crucial for keeping up with the digitalization surge. Employees turned out to be relying mainly on informational learning to acquire digital competencies. Peer learning, mutual support among work colleagues emerged as an important strategy to overcome challenges in the course of digital transformation. There are a number of advantages of peer learning. They use the same language to explain things. They are aware of the typical problems an end user is facing, and they are always reachable. Further, they have the potential to spread a positive attitude towards new technologies, create an optimistic atmosphere, and they help colleagues to overcome fears or doubts in connection with digital technologies. The preferred learning settings, the case studies where we were in, they had very traditional learning settings and formats, so face-to-face classroom training. But the study participants, they would have preferred online learning for the introduction of a new program or for the demonstration of a new device. And then they would have preferred individualized on-the-job learning to transfer knowledge to working routine and to acquire problem-solving skills. There was a preference towards small learning units to get accustomed to the program or the device in small steps, to learn about basic functions, later on about advanced functions, to try out different things, to receive ongoing tips and tricks. And the most important thing, to acquire problem-solving skills. So to feel secure, to know what options do I have, how can I react in case something is not working the way it should work. So we came to the conclusion that the acquisition of digital competencies includes learning how to use a program or device, but also to acquire problem-solving skills, to develop personal adaptability and cognitive flexibility, and to take personal responsibility for learning. There is a need for continuous workplace learning to keep up with the challenges in the course of digital transformation. This could be triggered by the employer by introducing digital knowledge disseminators among teams, by establishing peer learning groups across generations and hierarchies, and to foster a learning culture, to create a learning culture in which employees help each other and learn from mistakes. So these were the main results and conclusions, and I would like to finish my presentation with a question I would like to raise to you as the audience. And I would be happy to receive your comments or feedback and to enter in discussion with you. The question is, what is the role of university continuing education can play in workplace learning concerning the acquisition of digital skills? Okay, so that's from my side.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Eva, for your very lively and enlightening presentation of your research. Which, by the way, when I think that when I would have heard the outcome of your presentation 1.5 years ago, I would have been less receptive to it. And then many of the things that you say, I also see with me and my colleagues happening over the last year due to the digitalization jump that we had to make due to the pandemic. Who can I give the floor for a reflection on the question that Eva puts on the table, or a question related to her presentation? Ineke.
Yeah, Eva, thank you for the presentation, and it's my question, which was raised during your presentation. It's one of your conclusions about the error culture, and it's also one of the things I would like to discuss, because I see in your question for discussion, what is the role university can play in this part. I would suggest start with this error culture, because we see when asking for help for your colleagues and the community building is so important, then it might be a good idea to start with this safe and secure place in which you can make mistakes. I'm interested in your reaction on my suggestions for this.
Yes, I think the culture, or I will go back to it, foster a learning culture. Digital transformation is usually defined as a change in organizational structures, processes, or business models. But in order to implement this change, the culture is, to my opinion, the most important thing, because you have to overcome traditional thinking, traditional hierarchical thinking, and also traditional thinking on how things are done. So it's, for example, in a hospital, people are very afraid to make mistakes. And for example, they said, if I use the program in the wrong way, maybe I could harm the patient. And so the fear of doing something wrong, or the fear that, that the device isn't working, was very, very strong. And it puts a lot of stress on the people. Lot of psychological stress. And when there's an open culture, so when they help each other, and for example, a senior physician has no problem in asking a junior physician for help, and for maybe admitting that he doesn't know everything and doesn't know how it works. That's for me also part of this learning culture.
Yeah, and I can imagine that, especially in a hospital, because it's life and death is so close to each other, isn't it? And but as I can refer to the presentation of Marieke van der Schaaf earlier this morning, the keynote, she talked a bit about the APAS, entrustable professional activities. That's a way that you can, that the one who you work with is trust you in the things you are going to do. So that's a way of looking at how to rely on each other and to give moral support to each other. So your senior knows you can do this, so he trusts you. And I think this is a way of looking on or acting on this error of culture.
Yes, yes. And we could see that it works on an informal basis.
As well, yeah.
Yeah.
But culture, as we all know, is the hardest thing to change.
Yes, yes, that's right. But I think it goes bottom up.
Yeah.
So the people within the team, sometimes they also told us that they had to undermine existing rules in order to make things work properly.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Wieger, you don't have the micro on, sorry.
So I will stop the
Sorry, I would like to give
now.
the floor to Masha.
Yes, thank you so much for your great presentation. I had a question, if I can recall it correctly. I think the result was that most people would prefer to have a classroom session to learn a new tool, for example, in comparison to e-learning. And my question was that nowadays, especially for larger companies, you choose the e-learning possibilities because you need to scale it up very quickly and you might not have enough personnel. And if it's about technology, then all the employees has to be up to date. So I was interested, were there any comments about this, why people would somehow prefer these in-class sessions, and any thoughts from your side? I would be very interested. Thanks.
Okay, so actually it was the other way around. So the traditional learning format was classroom training, and they said especially during the COVID pandemic. So we started in 1990 and then we continued in 1920, and especially in 1920 they said the first introduction would be, they would prefer online. They would prefer to do it online. But then if it goes into detail and to get accustomed to the program, they would prefer personal individual training.
I can imagine to raise specific questions or apply it on specific use cases. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Eva Cendon.
Yeah, thank you, Eva, for the presentation. I thought about the question that you raised at the end, and also something that you said on, especially on hospitals, where there are different professionals groups who partly do not communicate with each other when it's about learning for hierarchical reasons. So I was wondering also that maybe it's going a bit in the direction of culture that Ineke was talking about, but I think more on this view beyond the own hospital or organization, because maybe a physician from hospital A would talk to the nurse from hospital B within a university continuing education environment and could learn that then maybe for his or her own workplace. But he or she would not do that if the group would be from their own hospital. So I think the contribution of UCE could really be this getting a view, or like it's still a safe place where you, a safe space where you could work with different hierarchies, but not from the same institution. And I think this is something as an added value you would not have if you have, for example, an in-house training, which of course would be good, but would be a first step to have that and to have this interprofessional exchange. Because even if we talked about the Agora today, I think it's sometimes hard to achieve it in this institutional setting. So maybe you want to say something on that, maybe from also from your from your outcomes from the project, but I think that could be a contribution. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much for your comment, and I agree with you. It would be a good idea to take them outside and to learn to overcome professional thinking or hierarchical thinking. In fact, our focus groups, they were mostly professional groups. So there were homogeneous groups, only physicians, only nurses, and then we had one group with mixed people, but there was only one physician. It's always very difficult to get physicians on board. But at my university, in Danube University Krems, we are a university for continuing education. So we offer master programs to healthcare professionals, and that's exactly what we are doing. We are bringing together different professions. We have in our master programs physicians, nurses, and other professions. And I have to admit that sometimes we hear some comments from physicians that they say this or that person should not be here in this master program, unfortunately. But they are very rare. So in general, I think they agree on the value of interprofessional collaboration and interprofessional learning.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe I think for the last question, Clara.
Eva, thank you for your interesting story. I was thinking about what you were telling, and I was thinking, just based on my own experiences, I recently ruined my own website, and once I lost a client in a machine trying to patch through, and it's really these panic moments. And I was thinking, panic sometimes is inevitable. So I have two suggestions dealing with the fear itself. And the other one, is it possible to divide between very important and less important? Because I suppose in a hospital, some actions could be disastrous. And others, well, you learn by making mistakes. So that's not so bad, maybe. Well,
the examples that were given to us, they were all examples where they said that's very critical.
okay.
So they had this in mind when they were talking about challenges of digitalization. They had this severe incidents in mind, people.
Okay.
But we could observe generational differences, that the millennials, they said, if it doesn't work, then I try out different patterns. I wait 5 minutes. It's not that bad. I can do it later on.
Oh.
And others said, so I think it's very individual. Individually, how do you perceive the stress? This situation may be stressful for one person, but for another not.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Maybe just out of curiosity, a last question, Eva. You are talking primarily from the learner's perspective, you could say, and the environment that they are in. How do the companies themselves consider the acquisition of digital skills? Did they think it was necessary? Did they invest in it or not?
No, it was taken for granted. So especially in hospitals, they were concentrating on professional training, so medicine or nursing, but how to deal with the technologies, there were no courses offered, and the people had to find for themselves courses outside of the company. And this was one of the recommendations from the workforce, to draw up a strategic training plan and to assess the learning needs with regard to digital skills.
Do you see already that this kind of activity of organizations is starting to become more normal, more routine, that organization invest in that?
For a manufacturing company, for example, yes, but in the hospital, still there's the focus on professional training. I think that they also need it for their, they need a certain amount of training per year.
Thank you very much, Eva, for your presentation and for the discussion that we were able to have with you. Thanks a lot, and also your presentation will be shared later on for the ones that will want to have a look at it. And indeed, applause, and I think it was Ineke who asked, can we open our mics to give a hand of applause? And I sincerely think that we should do so. So please open your mics, and then we can have also an audio applause for you. Okay, thanks. And then we go to the second presentation. Ineke and her colleagues do work on the pedagogy for continuing education, and that's where her presentation is about, and then especially the intriguing words of customization and reciprocity relate to that. Ineke, the floor is yours.
Yeah, and I'm going to share my screen. I actually practiced this last Friday. Let me see.
You only need to push the button for the presentation mode.
No, my screen is black, and it takes a while before the PowerPoint is opening.
Oh yeah, well, we already saw your PowerPoint.
You see it now completely? Or do you see me as well? I don't know what you can see.
Not in presentation mode yet.
Okay.
Try pressing F5 button.
I have a black screen as well, but we will get there.
Yep, now it's okay.
Okay. Well, thank you for the introduction. And my name is Ineke. I work at Utrecht University since already 1981. Well, first I studied there and then I worked there, did my PhD. And currently I'm a sociologist from origin, and currently I'm working at the Educational Consultancy and Professional Development Group at the Faculty of Social Sciences. And this is me, and we prepared a presentation as a team. One of the co-presenters is already having a presentation now, and in the afternoon, my colleague Anita will have a session as well. Well, what can you expect from me? First, I will tell you a little bit about the previous activities we did and the key concepts of customization and reciprocity. And then, as we know, there will be time for question and discussion. And especially, we're interested in how to integrate the things we find or didn't find, how to integrate it in the pedagogy. As we know, for most university staff at Utrecht University, the professional is a new target group. And next to the bachelor students, master students, PhD students, at least that's the situation in Utrecht University. Of course, for some professions, continuing education is necessary or even compulsory to get their registration, as we know, for the medical and the veterinary medical and psychology colleagues. It's necessary to get these registration points every year in the Netherlands. Well, talking about professional, what do we mean by professional here? We define a professional as someone who works at a higher vocational or academic level. That's in the Utrecht University Lifelong Learning Plan described as the professional and how we look at it. So that's our perspective. In previous activities, projects we did, we had a close look at this new target group of professionals, and we tried to find some characteristics in where they differ from bachelor and master students. And this is a generalization, but I need to have it to make it a bit clear. Professionals work in the field and in their profession, and they have experience. Their motivation is different in general compared to regular or initial students. They have individual learning goals and questions as well, which they want to be answered. They have a need for immediate transfer from what they learned to their daily practices. They have limited time. They have high expectations, and they are, of course, related to the time they have, because they have a job, they have probably a family and a private life and learning, and they all have, it's only 24 hours in a day. And of course, when you have a group of people, they come from different backgrounds. So in general, these are characteristics of this new target group of professionals. In this previous project, we discovered that a prefab program doesn't fit this new target group. And we described there's a need for customization and reciprocity. And then the question raised, what do we mean by customization and reciprocity? Well, we have a working definition, and now I have to really get my notes. And the working definition we used for customization is putting the professional in the center or the starting point when you design a course or a curriculum. So you can make use of the individual learning goals, you can make use of the link to the working practice, and you can make use of the pre-recognition of the participants. And then reciprocity, our working definition, educator and participants both gain from the encounter. The educator and other participants can learn from each other and from their earlier gained competences, experiences, and practical knowledge. And they all gain from network contacts. And of course, equality is also in this term integrated. Well, these are working definitions, and we were really interested in what can we find in the literature, recent literature about these concepts. Well, then we had the search strategy and that consists of a couple of points. First, we said, okay, we are going to have a look at the different educational databases. For us, it is, of course, ERIC and Scopus from Elsevier. And only articles that we can find from the last 5 years. And when we find an interesting source, then we look at the source itself and other sources that were mentioned in the source, which we call the snowball. And then we also find articles on the internet. So all they must be open, searchable. But let me go to the next slide. It was rather disappointing what we found. And as I said, we found only in the educational literature. So I'm interested in a discussion if you have any other suggestions where to look to find more interesting clues or points where we can continue our search. Because for the terms itself, we didn't find any interesting sources or literature. And we especially looked at the connection to designing a program, so to the pedagogy. Of course, then we were looking for synonyms, and you can see here a couple: participatory design, learning, teacher partnership, co-creation, student as partners. And all didn't fit with the idea we have in the, which I just mentioned in the working definitions. For instance, participatory design looks rather an interesting concept, but when you have a close look at the description, it is only about a group of stakeholders and not about the students and the teachers. Co-creation, as we all know, is an often used term, and we are very fond of it. But also here, it doesn't say and how to co-create together a course with your students. It's just a concept and not the transfer to how or to operationalize this to your designing your course. And then we found a very old concept of active student participation. And this participation ladder, as you can find here, it's often used also in other contexts. So this is not new, and it is a very general concept. I hope you can read it, but this is a ladder with 8 rungs. And here it is a dedicated curriculum with no interaction. And in this, the higher rung, the students are in control, and they are related with the role of the tutor. And as you can see here, students interacting are more active in the participation. I prefer, by the way, to rotate this ladder, then it is more a continuum. So you can, because this is rather normative, and in the hierarchy, it suggests this hierarchy, which on the top part is better, but I don't know if that's the case. Is always the case. So I prefer to rotate the ladder. And we will argue that when designing education for professionals, have a look at this part of the continuing. So where they can have influence on the program and even participate actively in the program. Having said this, so about their role, and where the question we often get, because we support teachers at university, at our university, who design education for professionals, where do they differ from the regular students? And then we say, where regular students, we learn them skills, knowledge, attitudes. The professional brings something new in. Because they worked in a working area, in a context, in a profession, and they bring experience in. So experience is new, what they bring in. And when we, and I hope this, the BICS framework is familiar, that you're familiar with the BICS framework. When we design courses or curricula, we make often use of the constructive alignment framework of BICS. You have predefined learning objects, you have learning activities and teaching activities, and you have assessment and feedback. And these all should be aligned with each other. And you can put this is a general framework, you can put this on different contexts. And we say, when designing education for professionals, you should make use of the professionals' experiences as well. So put these in the learning objectives, so no predefined learning objectives in advance, but make them together with the professionals and put these experiences in the teaching and learning activities as well. Yeah, that's what mainly my talk is about. And it's on a more general level. And if you want to see how this works in practice, I can draw your attention to this session of my colleague. She will have Hannah a testing ground laboratory session this afternoon on designing of customization and reciprocity in continuing education for professionals. But I can already give you a preview. We say integrate always intakes in the designing process. So let's get in talk with your students in this way, the professional, and hear what they expect, what they can bring in, and what they want to get out of the course. Well, thank you for your attention. And of course, questions and remarks are welcome. And of course, I also have a question for you. Because like I said earlier, we have a narrow perspective on this subject, and I'm interested in other perspectives. And we are at the start of seeing and looking for more information on how to define and operationalize customization and reciprocity.
Okay, thank you very much, Ineke, for your presentation. And it's interesting to see that that's to a certain extent in the practices of university continuing education, customization and reciprocity already play quite an important role. Also, what we saw in the first presentation, that this kind of customized on-the-job coaching is important, and we see that in many programs. But you're looking for our help, as I summarize it, to in what directions to find also other theories and evidence on to build upon those and get the knowledge base and the evidence base more sustained here. So who can I give the floor? Eva, and then Tom.
I think Tom was the first, so please, Tom.
Okay, then you are on top of me. Tom, please.
Well, sorry, I had a question. I don't have a specific comment for the literature. So if you want to do this first, and probably to get somebody others first.
Okay, then I start with Eva.
Well, I was just thinking, I mean, I don't know how you did your literature review and what you included, Dutch, English, German literature. I mean, I know German could be for the Netherlands possible, but what I wanted maybe to The one thing is, and I think, some issues maybe. One was about how, even if we talk about professionals and about reciprocity and customization, I still think it depends a bit on the cultural background you have in learning, even if it's about professionals and how they are used to participate in learning settings. So how actively, so they are used to work. The second thing I want to say is on that, maybe that I would say also there are sometimes, from my view, expectations on higher education, how they want to learn there. And I think this needs to be broken up in a way. So just, this is now more from experience. And when it comes back to the literature part, at least what I could link, and maybe my colleagues could put the link in the chat then, is that we had in the last 9 years, which we will talk about later on, in Germany, a quite big initiatives on university continuing education. And a lot of papers were also around pedagogical concepts. I think there are many old ones, like problem-based learning, experiential learning, but I think they added also some new things. And where I'm always thinking of, and I'm looking at Balash, who comes from adult education, is also Malcolm Knowles and his view on how to teach or how to learn with adults. So these would be my last point on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you want to react on this, Ineke?
Yeah, of course, I want to react. Thank you, Eva. And I'm interested in what you say about the expectations of the learners. So you mean that some learners would just sit and hang over and just tell me how the way it is? Is that what you're referring to? Or
yeah. I mean that they need to learn how to actively participate, and that they would have expectation when it at least comes to university learning. You know, they would say, well, I'm here to learn new knowledge. I have some expectations why I would do that at the university. So I think that's why I said breaking up also a bit expectations and the way I'm maybe used to learn. So this would be what I meant. Thanks.
We often think it's the traditional concept they have in mind about what learning is. So just sit and tell me how the way it is, instead of so the old-fashioned way they used to learn when they were at the university a couple of years ago or 20 years ago, instead of what we ask for them now to do.
Yeah, but you see there also already, I think, quite some differences also within, between universities within different countries. And yeah. I think Eva is right that we in the Netherlands we are biased. We look to the West more than we look to the East when it comes to the literature. So there might be some value in there as well. First we go to Clara.
Just can I make one remark, Wieger, because it was interesting when we did the literature search. I suggested to have a look at the German literature, because I know it's a very large country where there's a lot of happening, but we are used to look at the English literature only.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Clara.
Well, just a little suggestion. I know in the department USBO, they do this course leadership for the cultural sector. I don't know if you know it already, because they're doing exactly this. So I thought it could be interesting to talk with them.
Yeah, I talk a lot, and we do projects together with USBO. But you know, when you have a close look at a concept like customization or reciprocity, it's very hard to find the operationalization to the pedagogy. We just do now and then things, and we do things differently. And what I would like to, well, as Wieger mentioned earlier, a more evidence-based basis for how to operationalize this concept and make the transfer to the pedagogy.
Yeah. Maybe one of the things, as a matter of fact, Tom Overmans and myself are from that department as well. And one of the things that you sometimes see is that the wording that is used is a bit different from our wording. So peer-to-peer learning, adult learning, and collaborative adult learning, there is quite some recent literature on that, and that to a certain extent relates quite directly to your concept of reciprocity. So then that's also what we see, that people want to not only learn from the you could say from the teachers, but also from each other, and that's a kind of an operationalization of reciprocity also. So it's good.
Yes, that it's true. But what we mentioned in what the professional brings in is the expertise, and we often do not make the full use of this expertise into the education or the professional development we offer.
Exactly. Anita, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you for the interesting talk. I just wanted to mention, so maybe within the context of work-based learning from the UK mainly, maybe there are some hints on regarding this really individual learning path through a study, because they have individualized curricula that are really, they pick up what people bring in when they start, they design the curriculum around this. Maybe within this context, there might be some interesting things for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Tom, I go back to you. Are you ready now to put your question or remark on the table?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Ineke, for the presentation. And I totally agree. I am actually involved in the leadership program that you just mentioned, and I've experienced for like 15 years or so in professional training. And my question, I totally agree with the importance of intakes, and I do know that we actually do that in the link program that you just suggested. And I agree with the importance of the intakes, but have you found anything in your lit review regarding the balance between remaining open for like adjustments in the program and also offering like a base of the course that you want to proceed? So have you found anything about, on the one hand, the freedom to adjust the program in relationship to the individual needs, and also like the collective base that you want to tell something that you want to learn, and actually that you use to invite people to participate to a certain program?
And I think it's a very interesting point you mentioned here, because this is the main challenge for the teacher or the educator, because you have a certain program and people pay for the program and they expect a very lot of you for the program. And you really have to be open on how to, why you make use of their experience and their knowledge and their the skills and attitudes with the experience in the working area. For this literature, I always have a difficulty with, just like hierarchy, literature. but I think this is the struggle we have in this type of area. You want to be open, you want to have to encounter all the individual learning goals, but you have the goals for your own course as well.
Yeah.
So
and the individual goals can also be conflictive, right? So what one person wants might not be relevant for another person in the same course.
And I think especially for professionals, this is the most challenging thing you have to deal with as the educator. And I don't have the answer. The only thing that I could imagine we can do, and we will do and do so, is to discuss this open with the participants on how. So you invite them to talk about their expectations and their goals in these intakes. And then as an educator, you have to make a deal or a balance in your own goals and the other goals. But it is more open than we mostly deal with in. The question is also, is that good that it is more closed for bachelor and master students, or do you want to have it more open there as well? And especially, I think
complete new discussion, which I think is very relevant here as well. But I must say that your emphasis on the intake procedure I find very interesting, Ineke. That is something that we do in practice a lot, as it also helps you to already create a kind of a learning culture before a course even starts, and also open up, you could say, the perspectives of the participants in that course. But some extra research in that field on how intake procedures help to enhance the learning process and broaden the learning perspectives, that really also would already be a great of added value. Thanks a lot, Ineke. Looking at the time, and as we maybe designed this program, we said we should give everybody a serious lunch break. So that's the reason that I, without further ado, would like to go to the future. And give Eva Cendon the floor. Eva.
Sorry, I was applauding for Ineke because we did that before. I don't want to do it again.
I was looking at the time. You're completely right. Thanks, Ineke. Sorry. I suddenly had the feeling I had to hurry up. But Eva, take all the time you need.
Thank you very much. I'm actually dependent on my colleagues. I think it's Anita who will. Thank you very much, Anita. So I'm still seeing everybody, right? Great. So thank you very much. I try still to be quite short with our presentation, so that we have time to still talk or have some discussion. Well, I may welcome you to our presentation and our actual paper also that we handed in, University Continuing Education as Innovation Lab for Future Education, Potentials and Limitations. My name is Eva Cendon. I'm professor for University Continuing Education and Teaching and Learning at the Institute of Educational Science and Media Research at the FernUniversität in Hagen in Germany. And we are three today here. So I'm here together with my colleagues Anita, Mörth and Dorothée Schulte. What our presentation is about is actually very much about the, the role of UCE as innovator for the future of education or higher education. So what we could see in the last years is a lot of research, also on international research, on how should higher education or teaching and learning in higher education look in the future, how could it develop? And not least, COVID-19 told us that we need to change things because there are things happening and we need to not only to react, but to be able to act. So what we did was in the, and maybe I could have the next slide. What we want to do is actually to look, to take the assumption that UCE could be an innovation lab or innovation laboratory, and we want to see how this could be. We used for that accompanying research from the last 9 years in Germany. There was a big initiative going on opening up universities for new target groups. And we looked how, with a case study research, actually, how this innovation does show, or how it could show, and if it's how UCE could provide actually innovation to future education. So in the first step, I may ask you, and the next slide again, please. What is your perspective on UCE as innovation laboratory? Are you coming here as researcher? Are you coming as practitioner or higher education management? So your view on that. And for those who have the research perspective, please give me a 1. The practitioners, please give me a 2. And the higher education management, please give me a 3 and put it in the chat so that we get an idea what is your interest here. Thanks, Wieger, for your. Okay. Well, I I see there's a lot of also research perspective, and actually I'm also thankful for that, because I think when we come to the questions, we hope that you also provide us with some insights or some also critical remarks on what we did. But of course, we would also put in the other two perspectives within this presentation. So maybe the next slide, thank you. We start with a short overview what innovation is. We will say just very shortly about context and methodology, present some of the findings, and then have based also on these perspectives a short discussion with you. What I would ask you is that you put questions you have for understanding in the chat during the presentation, so we can already work on that and have that actually gathered there, and could then also have some minutes for the discussion. With that, I move on to my colleague Anita, who will start with what innovation is. Thank you.
Anita, you are muted.
Now I'm unmuted, thank you. So thank you, Eva. Hello, everybody. So what do we mean when we say innovation? So in our study, we refer to an understanding of innovation as the improvement of something existing as well as something new, whereas the new can mean new to the world, like an invention, or new only to the system of reference, which means something exists somewhere and it's only new to the context where it did not exist before. Beyond, we see innovation as a social process because it requires action from one or usually more actors. In higher education, innovation is often linked to the third mission, which is a crucial task of higher education innovations that is destined for giving impulses to society and thus unfolding potentials of innovation. Based on such a concept of innovation, university continuing education seems to be a natural habitat for innovations. UCE is per se a context that mediates between academia and society. It's a boundary spanner between those spheres. It is advancing basic university education and it's imparting new scientific developments and results. And it is doing this especially towards professionals that are already involved in innovation in different fields. So let me quickly explain what we did in our research. Our data stems from the funding initiative Eva has already mentioned. It was from 11 to 20. The quota of all German higher education institutions successfully applied for funding to develop UCE programs and measures, which can be conceptualized as innovations, and this in 4 thematic fields. This is target groups, formats, study formats, organizational structures, and cooperation. We have analyzed all available self-statements from projects on innovation, so what they say, what they do as innovation. This was 18 video statements of 16 of these projects, and we've identified one case per thematic field, which was most best represented this field. We've used a case study approach because we sought to better understand the phenomenon innovation in higher education, especially in UCE, and thus to constitute preliminary conceptual building blocks for innovation in higher education. We've analyzed those 4 cases we've identified against an innovation matrix that is based on Titz and Besant's innovation space. And our innovation matrix has 2 dimensions. The one is the 4 layers of innovation that is focusing on what can be changed: the product, the process, the position, or the paradigm. And the second dimension, this addresses the degree of innovation, what I've told you before. This is something new or an improvement. And now may I ask Dorothée to please fill in our innovation matrix with our 4 cases. And Dorothée, can you click yourself, or shall I?
I'm not sure if I'm able to.
Okay. Oh, then I do.
I can try. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Anita. So yeah, thank you. I introduce now our 4 examples for this different fields. And I introduce first a case which is called Project Open. It was at a University of Applied Science in Baden-Württemberg here in Germany. And it focused on addressing the professional group of nurses as new target group. And nurses in Germany usually have completed a professional qualification at specific vocational schools. They usually have a secondary school certificate, so usually, or most of them, not a regular higher education entrance qualification. And most of them are women, so they often work part-time and mainly due to family commitments. And to meet the needs of this target group, the project designed a new bachelor degree program as part-time provision with flexible modules and blended learning approach, and also with a strong track on theory-practice integration. And this project could take advantage of a new legislative change to create new admission processes, especially for these professionals, as in Germany, we have the special situation that we have different competencies between the Länder, we call it, or the counties, you would say in English. So part-time studies is not, you cannot study part-time in each county the same. So in terms of innovation, we have, of course, a product innovation with a new degree program. We have also process improvement on how the program is delivered. And we can also see a paradigm shift in the university's missions, now including professionals without regular higher education entrance qualification as equivalent students, just to point out or just to highlight some aspects of innovation here. So now I try to move further, Anita. Okay, sorry. Thank you. Better to do so. Another example I want to introduce is the project Studium Divers. This was a project at the University of Business and Society in Ludwigshafen, and it aimed at diversifying their student body, which means they wanted to attract learners that have time-wise restrictions such as working part-time or family commitments. And the project worked on adjusting the timeline and structure of existing bachelor's and master degree programs, and measures included incorporating e-learning and blended learning elements, including the modularization of the programs and new regulations for crediting across the degree programs. And in terms of innovation, we have on the one hand the improvement of the degree programs on product level. We also have new processes and regulations for the delivery of the programs to studying part-time. And an interesting aspect is here the adjustment were positioned in a new context, which is an aspect of positioning. By spreading to the students, you now can study a la carte. There was a message on it. And you can also see the paradigm shift at the university positions in a new way for part-time studies. And I move forward to the next example, please. I do it myself. Wait, I do. I try to. No, it doesn't work. I'm sorry. Okay. The third example is the project Mint Online, which is very interesting because of its organizational structure. The project created a brand that stands for UCE and the STEM field, which is Mint in German, focusing on themes around sustainability, energy, and environment. And for this, the 8 participating universities and non-university research institutions created a strategic alliance. And they called it the Education Alliance STEM Online. And the aim was to attract professionals from the STEM field and to offer them flexible and part-time study opportunities. And within this alliance, they developed new programs, improved existing ones, and presented this as a joint portfolio that allows students to choose and combine programs and modules from different partner institutions. And you here have innovation we could see on product level, as both improvement of existing programs in terms of rearranging and improving these programs. And we have new programs as well as an overall thematic portfolio of programs itself as a new product. And we have an aspect I want to highlight is a paradigm paradigm shift, which I have in brackets, because we can see that there's a joint mission of the alliance, but we do not know if there's a paradigmatic innovation within the individual institution, of course. So I come to the last example to highlight is a project QUP, we say in German, QUP, at the University of Potsdam, and it wanted to develop programs for professionals that will have to manage the demographic change within their organization. And key to the project was a cooperation with the UP Transfer, which is a subsidiary company of this university, and they changed they shared responsibilities. I'm sorry. And the cooperation was characterized by the division of responsibilities, the university being in charge of defining standards and the degree, and the UP transfer for doing the management services, student support, delivery of programs, and so on. And in terms of innovation, we have here the new thematic field of the demographic change, programs for demographic change. And we have the university positions in a new way by focusing on the new target groups, managers who have to deal with the demographic change in their companies. And we have a quite interesting innovation on paradigm level, as a university makes use of cooperative synergies and also by outsourcing responsibilities to a subsidiary. So these are 4 examples. So I hand over to Eva again, who will just give us a conclusion so that we can come to discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So the question actually that we posed at the beginning, how can UCE, what is the potential of UCE as driver for innovation for future education in higher education? What we could see from our research is that we have, on the one hand, different directions of innovation. So if you look at the examples that Dorothée has explained, we have on the one hand side the direction inside the organization, which you could see by at least 2 examples of our research, where it's about changing things within the organization. And on the other hand, the change the innovation outside the organization. So if we think about the STEM project, about the different organizations who work together and who build a new form together, there you could see, well, if they change something inside their organizations, we actually do not know on this side. The second point is about direct and indirect, I'm not sure, effects, which means where do we have changings within the organization, in the processes, in the way that people are dealing with teaching and learning. And if we have indirect effects, which would be the last examples, where it's about changing attitudes of educators within the organization by having trainings for them, but which would not directly affect the organization itself, but through the educators, actually maybe the culture at some point, as we had it already. Last point, there is a different potential of impact on the organization when we look back at our innovation metrics that we use. And we could say that the different layers probably have a different impact. When it's on the product, it could be maybe a less impact on the organization, as when we look, of course, at processes that change already the way that are things done. And even, of course, if we look at different target groups and, of course, on paradigms that change, which would be a longer process. And last word, because I'm overdue with that, is, of course, that this is small scale. And on the one hand, and on the other hand, we don't know the effects in some years. We are already after these big initiatives, but we don't know how things will develop in the next years, and even don't know exactly about what COVID makes with that. So thank you on that. And I would actually rather now move on to the last question, which we pose for you, our discussions. And well, so one is the question about potentials and limitations, of course, but looking at the researchers, we would also ask, which conceptions of innovation do you use in your research? And what do you think about our matrix? And how do you think that we can see innovation in that? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eva, Anita, and Dorothée, for your presentation. I think you gave us a lot to think about and a lot to react on. So I will open the discussion. Who can I get the floor?
Well, nobody wants to talk.
Well, I do, but I don't dare to take the lead as a chair here. But maybe to oh no, Ineke, the floor is yours.
I will give you a hand, Wieger, so you don't have to ask a question. No, thank you for your presentation. And I'm interested in the last discussion topics. Which conceptions of innovation do you use in your research? Well, in Utrecht University, we had the Educated program, which is about ICT and blended learning in the university itself. And we make use of Rogers' theory of innovation. So you have innovators and frontrunners, and then you often have this gap. And then come to the early majority, the late majority, and the laggards. That's the innovation theory we use in Utrecht University concerning blended learning. But then this whole, it takes a while, and of course we have to support, so we adjust the support to the group you belong. If you're a front runner, you need space, you need freedom, and you need other support than the majority that lags a bit behind. So that's the way we look at it. So it's not about continuing education, but about the theory of change we use there. And it's interesting because it takes years, and then all COVID-19 came, and now we all suddenly make use of ICT. I worked for 30 years on this subject, and then in 1.5 years, we reached quite a lot. So yeah, what does a theory of change say in a time of a pandemic? That's an interesting question.
Eva, do you want to react on that, or one?
No, I think thank you very much, because it's really also about inside the university. You know how innovation takes place within a change process. So I think this is an interesting, maybe also complementary view to what we did. So I think what really goes on within the university, we did actually an outside view. Yeah, you're right. Thank you.
Yeah. And maybe if I may, Eva, maybe Dorothée or Anita want to react on that. What I see is important also in university continuing education are two other concepts that I find very useful, and the one is crossing borders, and that is something that we see happening, crossing borders of, you could say, the initial education and university continuing education. So we have, for instance, a few programs where we experiment with mixed classrooms, where we bring bachelor and master students in the same classroom with senior professionals from, for instance, from ministries. We do that at the Faculty of Geosciences, where they bring in their cases, and there is a kind of a dialogue between the two groups on how to apply frontline knowledge. But also how to reflect on the kind of questions that civil servants and politicians pose on issues like environmental planning, for instance, in this case. So that's one thing, but also crossing borders in co-producing programs where you combine knowledge transfer, training in the application of knowledge, peer review, bringing in cases from practices, etc. And there you get a kind of, what you could say, a kind of assemblage, and that's the second concept that I think is important. And most innovations are not so much that something completely new is invented, but the newest aspect is that we bring together and combine elements that we thought were from different domains. And for instance, I'm working together with an intergovernmental local level group of local councils about inter-regional entrepreneurship, public entrepreneurship. to deal with issues that the private sector cannot deal with, that's still our public interest. And we try to together to create a new new program.
Wieger, I'm being told that people have finished in other parallel sessions and people are leaving the room. So my question is, what shall we do? Shall we close here or shall we continue?
Do you mind if the others mind, and if they have to leave? But I would prefer to have 5, maximum 10 minutes more to discuss.
Okay, so I'll tell them.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect. Eva, you wanted to react or to say something? Otherwise, I gave the floor to Nemet Balash.
I just have one short comment. I think this is another very important field in university continuing education, where not only interdisciplinarity, but different practices may be channeled in to special programs. And I would put the emphasis on special methodologies used. I think something is very much important, that in those universities where this type of activity and grounds are used in a conscious way, I think they could collect and share good experience on how to build on the learning types represented by those people who learn most of them part-time, or to represent a certain level of good quality experience from work. And I think this is something important at a time when learning styles and learning needs change dramatically, and put continuing education activities into turbulent change. So I think we have to be cautious about at what capacities and what depth to change and what is at stake. And I think it is, again, a certain level of expectation on us from the outside, from the learners who we work together with, that we need to provide quality service. And I think this is also another very important matter, how to deliver by not risking quality, and at the same time to integrate practices with an analytical and research mind for innovation and development. So I think this is something important in the field of work-based orientations. Thank you very much for all the input, and sorry for being long.
No problem. Thank you very much. Masha.
Yes, thank you so much for the interesting talk. I just wanted to add a minor point. As Wieger mentioned that you have tried out mixing students from bachelor and master, or having people from industry having some topics or projects. I just wanted to add, we also have experience with this, providing the challenges from the industry, letting the students work with these industry partners, but also tried a new kind of concept where the students of higher semesters, and this can be also extended to company employees. We only have tried it with the students, to be as a coach, supporting the students in the topic, give them tips and tricks, on the same side getting a training as a coach. And I think these kind of concepts could be interesting mixture of either students of higher education or higher semesters to the earlier ones, or adding the professional employees of companies joining these students, work together. This could be one point that could be interesting in this part. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. We are. I think this is a very important point, Masha. Thank you very much for that. Eva, we will be closed down in 1 minute, I think. Do you have, do you or Dorothée or Anita have a last word you want to share with us? In case not,
Thank you.
Then I suggest we applaud you. Also, we unmute and applaud you for your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There
Thank
is
you,
much,
Anita and
Thank you.
Dorothée.